And it looks like we are live. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as always, is my good friend and colleague. He is your Denver Broncos insider, the one and only Erick Trickel. Erick, what's going on, man? How was your week this week?
It was actually really good. I got around to watching Hamilton. That's super hyped up on Disney Plus and everything. Their Broadway play. Absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Super good. So many talented people in that show. I really walk away wishing that they would do that with more Broadway shows and stuff like that. It's just awesome to see. Obviously, live is probably a little bit better, but I'm not going to make it to New York or anywhere to go see it live. So let me have it that way. Other than that, week's been really good. Spending time with the family. It's been pretty nice here a little bit, but one thing I am worried about is that dip netting actually just started here. And when dip netting starts, the craziness starts.
Okay. So explain to everybody what dip netting is, just first and foremost. I know a little bit about it, but go ahead and give us what is dip netting exactly?
You have a net at the end of a pole that you stick in the river and hope to catch salmon.
So is the salmon run getting going pretty good right now then?
It's supposed to be a really good year. I don't know how it's been so far with other types of fishing that you're able to do. But yeah, I've heard that's supposed to be really good. I'm going out not this upcoming Sunday, but the following Sunday. My in-laws are going to be down. Well, one of them's coming down on Tuesday, and then the other one's coming down next Thursday. So we're going to be probably spend a little bit of time with them, dip netting and everything. But yeah, we're super excited for it. Ready to have some salmon. Haven't gone dip netting and didn't go dip netting last year, so just excited to get back out there. I'm going out on the boat. I'm not going to be standing in the river and everything holding that net. I'm being smart. A boat's the best way to go.
I've never been. I can honestly say I've never been. I haven't been fishing in a long time, actually. We were supposed to go. We were supposed to go fishing when I went down to Wheatland this last time to go see my folks and to kind of hang out with those guys. I was supposed to go try to catch some walleye, and we never actually got a chance to go. Just too many people around, and with Samantha being tired and everything like that. We're 19 days away today from having a baby here. So with everything going on with that, it was just we couldn't get a chance to go out and go fishing. But I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, every July is dip netting. Typically towards at least the end of the month. It's typically always the 31st. Sometimes they'll extend it a little bit. But yeah, come up some July. I'm definitely sure that I can get you on my buddy's boat and everything like that. And I mean, even possibly get you out and go halibut fishing, which is real fishing.
Hey, now that's what I'm talking about. My cousin and my uncle went a couple of years ago, and they went and caught a whole bunch of. They caught rockfish. They caught red something. I can't remember exactly what it is. And my cousin caught it, and the guy that took him out said, if you catch a fish like that, it's a very lucky thing. And like they're very rare, they're very hard to catch. So I don't know. They said it was going to be a good fishing day because you caught that. So yeah. I'm kind of intrigued to see how all that turns out. I'd love to get up there in Alaska and to meet Chelsea and meet everybody and say hello and hang out, have a barbecue and stuff like that. It'd be great.
Yeah, of course, man. I'm always inviting you guys up here.
Yeah. It's right now with everything in the world right now, it's kind of hard to be able to do that. But at the same time, as soon as everything kind of clears up and we can start traveling again, I'm definitely about it. I need to get up that way. I've always wanted to go to Alaska and to go where you're at. It seems like it's pretty up that way. Pretty beautiful. Or is that the way I should say that?
Yeah, it is. On that note, though, I find it super funny that a good friend of the show, Luke Polglaze, I've been trying to get him up here again. Yeah. He's the godfather to my daughter and everything like that. It's been 3 years since he's seen her. And I've been trying to get him up here. So I was joking around. I was looking at tickets. And normally tickets for him to fly up here are like upwards of $1,000. Tickets right now, $384. Like, yeah, let's go. But then you have to sit there and you have to get tested before you come up here, or you have to sit there and, I don't want to say the word, but stay off by yourself, I guess would be a good way to put it. Try and get around the censorship a little bit. But I just find it ironic that it takes what's going on in the world to get ticket prices to where I can actually afford tickets.
You're not wrong. All right, well, guys, this is the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Enough about trips to Alaska and dreaming about salmon fishing. Today, guys, we have a very fun episode for you guys. Going based on a conversation that Erick and I had a little bit later of last week's super long episode. We apologize for that. But the techniques on the defensive line, what do they mean? And where are these guys going to line up? We're also going to break down which Broncos players fit best inside each and every one of these techniques. And there's some guys that are going to line up in multiple different areas. Erick, go ahead.
And I just want to say is actually The reason why we're getting to this conversation was, I think, actually, Charlie, some questions from Charlie Beagle
Okay.
in the chat, I think is who it was. So Charlie, if it was you, I can't remember for sure if it was. Pretty sure it was. But yeah, you're the reason for tonight's topic.
Yeah, awesome. You know what? We love to engage with the fans and try to teach everybody. I'm going to learn a little bit of some new stuff here as well, especially because we do have the resident draft king, and guys, Erick does a lot of film work, and he does amazing film work. Does good film pieces for milehighhuddle.com. Go check those out whenever you get a chance to. Every now and again, we'll get some stuff. I would like to do some stuff as well here soon, but. Anyways, a couple matters of business before we get started here. First and foremost, guys, make sure you're following the show on Twitter. If you have a Twitter account, make sure you follow us at @DVDD_pod. It's the easiest way to keep your fingers on the pulse of what is going on with the show. You guys can follow me at Sanderson MHH, and for Erick at Erick Trickel as well. Also, follow at Mile High Huddle for instant Broncos news, breaking news and analysis, film articles, opinion pieces, just anything Broncos related. You're going to find it there. It's also the easiest way to keep up with what's going on at milehighhuddle.com with the Huddle Up podcast, Building the Broncos, Mile High Insiders, as well as Dove Valley Deep Divers as well. Also, if you guys are financially able to do so, head on over to huddleuppod.com, get your merch. That's the merch booth. Get yourself a hat, get yourself a t-shirt, do whatever you got to do to help to support the show in that aspect. And if you can't do so, the 3 easiest ways to support the show are: 1, subscribe wherever you are watching, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, anything like that. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video that you guys see. And then if you love what we're doing, share it. Share it out to as many Broncos fans as you possibly can, because that's the easiest way to get this following just a little bit bigger. And we're growing exponentially, especially on YouTube right now.
So real quick before we get into this, I just want to drop in here and say happy birthday, Sean. We won't sing your happy birthday. We would like you to keep your hearing. And have a great birthday, man.
Yeah, Sean comes in and says, congratulations, been following DVDD since the start of it. Happy birthday to you, Sean. We appreciate your support, man. And you're a new name in this. I haven't seen your name on the comment stream very often. So speaking of the comment stream, let's go say hello to everybody. Stu McPeak, what's up, Zeus? How we doing, buddy? Talon coming in here. Robert Caslow, James Campbell, Bawana obviously doing his thing behind the scenes. Duke, hey, what's up, Duke? How you doing, buddy? Charlie Beagle as well. Jay Boss, everybody, thank you all for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Now, Erick, you've got a spreadsheet. We're going to do this kind of the same way that we did last week when we broke down the 53-man roster. This spreadsheet, it's a little bit difficult to see, but go ahead and pull this up really fast. And we're going to start over on the defensive end, actually, the defensive end position, the 9 technique. Erick, what is the 9 technique?
So let me pull this up real quick and kind of show it. So typically your 9 technique, as you can see here, sorry if you guys are struggling to see it a little bit. I'm trying to fit as much information on here in one thing as you can see. And obviously, as you can see, we're only going to cover one side of this. So from basically the 9 technique to the 0 technique we'll just go from like left to the inside. Basically, because just on the other side, it's just the same thing, just opposite.
Yeah.
So no need to cover that. But as you can see here, your 9 technique is typically your defensive lineman. Typically, a wide 9 is another term for it. A lot of times you see them in a 2-point stance. Now, a 2-point stance is basically you're just on their feet. There's no hand in the dirt. That's what you typically see it in a 3-4. One of the more recent names that I can think of as your wide 9 was Vinny Curry back when he was first with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was a wide 9. I'm trying to think of anybody with the Broncos. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. Typically with the Broncos, what we see is every once in a while we'll see a 6 technique and a 7 technique, but not really wide 9s. Von Miller on occasion winds up as a wide 9, but not all that often. So that's kind of what your wide 9 is. It's just they're the guy, typically a faster rusher, not as strong, not as powerful. They're basically whole goal. They're the better athlete, good bend. They just want to kind of get the outside shoulder of the tackle, the left tackle, trying to pull the left tackle out and dip underneath them and just get to the quarterback. That's kind of what their main job is as that wide 9.
Yeah, Vinny Curry is a good name there, but the one that most Broncos fans are going to know, especially from his time with the Dallas Cowboys, DeMarcus Ware is like
Oh
the
yeah,
godfather of the wide nine
yeah,
technique, man. 2-point stance, way outside of the tight end even, and coming super bendy, super flexible, coming with that quick twitch first step off the edge. That is probably your predecessor of not really the predecessor, excuse me, just the prototypical is the word I was looking for. Prototypical wide nine player, DeMarcus Ware. Now, it's going to be what are you laughing at here?
James.
Oh, James, yeah.
I have often wondered about this. I don't get it either. Yes, this is actually how it goes. You have your 9 technique, your 6 technique, then your 7 technique. No idea why. First of all, I don't know why 8 skipped, and I don't know why it goes 9-6-7 instead of 9-7-6. But Lawrence Taylor played a little bit of that 6-9 kind of technique a little bit. Robert, that's kind of where he was.
Derek Thomas as well.
Didn't JJ Watt play a lot of wide 9 for Houston? I don't think so. I think that the farthest he went out was about that 6 technique. I think is where he kind of went a little bit. And Bradley Chubb, he's another one. He kind of stays at that 6 technique more so than going out wide with that wide 9.
So to break this down for some people that can't actually see what we've got going on here, your 9 technique is lined up. So if your basic offensive line looks like center, guard, tackle, and then a tight end, your wide 9 is lined up on the outside shoulder of the tight end. Okay, so your 6 technique is lined up either shaded on the outside shoulder of the tackle or face up against the tight end. So that's what we're talking about with like a Bradley Chubb. That's where you're going to see him. He's going to be on the outside shoulder. Von Miller a lot of the time is also the same kind of a technique, lined up on the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle and at the face of the tight end. Okay, so to move that back inside just another position here, this is where that 7 technique is that's face up with your offensive tackle. That's a guy that you're going to see the true 4-3 defensive ends play a lot. Guys like Calais Campbell is that, and Malik Jackson actually in the Jacksonville defense when he was down that way was playing a true 7 technique defense. I actually brought it up earlier in the draft that when the Buffalo Bills drafted AJ Epinesa in the 2nd round, to put him at the 7 technique defensive end spot, that is probably the best fit for him anywhere on the defensive line. And that defense with Sean McDermott running that 4-3 base front, that's going to be an amazing fit for him there.
See, with AJ Epinesa, I mean, it's just a small difference of where you're lighting up. I really do think that the 5 technique is his best spot. That's really right on the outside shoulder of the tackle. That's where he's going to be able to use what athleticism he does have. Some of the power that he has, he's going to be able to kind of stand him up, take that shoulder. And the whole point that you want to do with this when you get that outside shoulder is, so we often say that the tackle's butt should be the camera and the quarterback's the star. So you always want to keep their butt on the quarterback is what they want to do. So when you take that outside shoulder with the power and stuff, when you're coming from a 5 technique, is you're turning them. Is you want to get them, so the line's this way, you want to get them facing this way, basically. But the quarterback back here, because then it's minimizing the distance they have to get to the quarterback. That's something that AJ Epinesa can do. I mean, 7 technique and 5 technique, there's just a very small difference in that. You can still do that from the 7 technique, but I just want him just a hair closer to that left tackle. And then 6 techniques. 6 techniques aren't really used all that often in the NFL that much anymore. Typically, they're more of a 7-5 technique kind of thing is where we see them a little bit more often, but occasionally we do see them. And they're just lining up right on the tight end. One very common one was actually Khalil Mack lined up as a 6 technique last year and got a sack against the Denver Broncos because Noah Fant was the guy blocking him. That's one play where I do know of a 6 technique being played. So 7-5 technique, not quite as good of athletes, good power, but you still want them to have a little bit of athleticism there. That's what you really want from them. And typically when you see these kind of roles is when you're looking at a 4-3 front, which is 4 down linemen, typically you have a 2-6 techniques or a 6 and a 5 technique with 2-3 techniques. And we'll get to 3 techniques here in a little bit. In a 3-4 front, typically you're looking at 2 5s and a 0 technique or a 1 technique, just kind of shading. And we'll get to that a little bit, just kind of what the difference is. And if you can see it a little bit, there are also some things of like a 2-eye. We'll cover that as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of the stuff that Erick's going to get into. I know a lot of this basic stuff, and just there's so much to learn here because just the different alignments. I mean, you could be playing a 2-eye technique or a 2 technique, and all that is about 6 inches worth of you sliding to the inside. Instead of being face up on the guard, you're going to be sliding inside just a little bit to slide to that inside shoulder. So
and
there's. Go ahead.
Sorry, and one big difference too that we'll see with a lot of these is it's not so much 4-3 or 3-4 front what you're seeing the changes in. It's gapping. Are you a 2 gapping lineman or are you 1 gapping lineman? That's where we'll see a lot of these things. That's more so. We'll get into that a little bit more with the eyes, with the 2 eyes and the 3 eyes and all that stuff like that. We'll kind of get to that a little bit more once we get to that about how the gap assignment of it. And trying to think of this, Wade Phillips was very, very popular for using a 1 gap defense on his, or 1 gap attack on his defensive line. Big Fangio, he kind of uses a combination of 2 gapping and 1 gapping. And I'm trying to think what was his name with the big heavy set dude for the New England Patriots?
Vince Wilfork.
When the Patriots had him, they were more of a 2 gapping defensive front. So we'll get to that a little bit here. Charlie asks, so a slow 9 tech is kind of useless? Yeah, kind of. Typically, if you're a slow 9 tech, you're going to be moved inside a little bit, probably to a 7 or 5 technique.
Yep. All right, I'm going to go back to the comment stream here just really quick. Stu McPeak jumping in here with a $10 super. Zeus, man, raining down from Mount Olympus himself. Thank you, Stu, for joining us tonight. We appreciate you, man. Robert actually has a pretty quick, interesting question. Are you only covering the D-line or the linebackers and D-line mixed up? Yes, they do, but really this is defensive line techniques. Outside linebackers, you could call, and that's at DeMarcus Ware, outside linebacker to 3-4, Von Miller as well. Like that's where you're seeing your 9 techniques there. This is really specifically the defensive line and how these guys are lining up. So it is really more that than a combination. I mean, you can. If you move this back a little bit, you can do alignments with the linebackers as well, where they're supposed to line up, face up in the A gap, face up in the B gap, stuff like that. Where the defensive focus is lining up like what's the strong side of the field, how the linebackers shift what the defensive line is trying to do up on the front to control, make sure that there's no open gaps for the running plays and stuff like that. So, but yeah, this is specifically defensive line. And then also, Robert, with another question here, where did Simon Fletcher fit? And this is probably your 7-5 technique. He was a true 4-3 defensive end.
Yeah, that's from what I can remember. That's kind of where he played in a little bit. And I just want to go back and say, Stu, man, I managed to catch a little bit of when you joined Chad and Zach. Man, it was awesome to be able to put a face to the name, man. You did a great job. Like, we're so thankful that you're part of this community. You're just awesome, man. Thank you.
I haven't got a chance to actually listen to that yet. I've been insanely busy. But I will go back and make sure I check that out. James coming in here with a 3-pound donation. Happy birthday, Wyoming. Yes, it is. 1890. 1890 was when Wyoming was brought into the Union. And happy birthday to my home state. Hashtag state of being, hashtag Broncos World. James, thanks for joining us, bud. We appreciate you. Also, to you, good job on the podcast. I did listen to that one. So we're friends on Facebook, friends on Twitter. So I've got a face to a name, but to be able to hear your voice, to hear your accent, and to actually listen to you talk some football and actually verbalize things was very, very good to hear. I did appreciate that. What's up, Christy? How we doing?
I gotta say, Robert, you managed to ask the questions that are not quite covered in our topic. And if we want to cover them, we really have to expand the topic and just go down a whole other road. Like, we appreciate it, Robert, and we'll try to get to this if we have time, but we want to get through this topic first, and this will be the first question we come back to.
Yeah. Are you including the different 4 and 3 techniques in Fangio's formations? Yeah. Yes, we'll talk just a little bit briefly about that. And no, there are not people in Wyoming. Wyoming doesn't exist. It's a government simulation meant that if you were told that you were in Wyoming, you have been abducted by the government and or aliens.
It's a simulation inside a simulation inside another simulation.
Yep.
Credit if you guys get the reference.
That's exactly what it is.
All right.
So get back to this here. So I didn't realize that your 5 technique often lines up on the. Actually, never mind. I did. Looking at your 4 technique, I thought that was more inside shading, more to the inside shoulder of the offensive tackle. So that's actually right. Looking at this here, 4 and your 3 eye technique. What are you looking at here? This is your B gap between the guard and the tackle. We're moving from left to right here. So this would be between left tackle and left guard. Your 3 technique is pretty much splitting that, facing up in the B gap, and that's where he's going to be at. Your 4 eye tech, or your 4 eye technique is going to be inside shade of the tackle, and then your 3 eye technique is going to be outside shoulder of the left guard. So that's your 4 and 3 technique. Guys that you're going to see play this year, probably a lot of Jarrell Casey is going to play a lot of that 4 technique. He's going to play some 5 technique as well.
So basically, the easiest way to explain it is this is your left tackle. Here's your defensive lines. The one on the outside shoulder will say this is the outside shoulder. That's your 5 tech. This is your 4 tech. This is your 4 eye. All the eye basically signifies is that it's the inside shoulder of who you're lined up against. That's really all the eye is. The most prominent one that we've seen in Broncos over the years has been Derek Wolfe. This was exactly what he did. He would move up and down the line, basically play in that 3 to 5 technique. This last year, we saw him line up a lot as that 4 eye on the inside shoulder of the tackle. There were some times where he would be face up on the tackle, but for the most part, it was inside. A little bit of 3 as well. So that's what that is. Those are guys that this is typical what you see in a base 3-4 defense. Bigger guys, about 300 pounds, have pretty good athletes. Chris Jones is another very famous one in the NFL right now. Fletcher Cox, he can do this a little bit. Trying to think back to other ones we've had over the years. Malik Jackson, when he was with Denver, this is kind of what he did. He was kind of that 4 technique facing up against the left tackle. Basically, these are guys that you want to push over your tackle and get to the quarterback. You want them to throw them out of the way and basically, and again, just get after the quarterback. These are your interior pass rushers. Now, your 3 technique can be considered your UT, your under tackle, if they are on the right side of facing off against the right side of the offensive line. For some reason, it's escaped me what happens to be on the other side, but they basically do a little bit of the same thing. And one big difference getting into this is when you get to gapping. Now, typically, if you are shooting a one gap scheme, we'll cover this first. A 1 gap scheme means that if you're the defensive lineman, you are responsible for 1 gap. This puts a little bit more pressure on the linebackers behind you because they have to cover the other gap. Now, if you are lining up as just a normal 4 technique, you will either be in charge of the C gap between the tackle and the tight end, or the B gap between the tackle and the guard. You will have one of those. Your whole job is to shoot that gap, get into the behind the line of scrimmage, and cause disruption. Now, the linebacker behind you, typically in a 3-4 front that we most often see a 1 gapping kind of system in, will be in this case, looking at the left tackle, will be your weak side linebacker. They'll be responsible for the other gap that you don't take. Now, if you are, actually, I should actually clear up something. I spoke incorrectly. You're not typically a 4 technique. Typically, if you are shooting a 1 gap, you will be lined up as your 5 technique or your 4 eye technique. And it kind of gives away what gap you're shooting, because if you're lined up as the 4 eye, you're going to be shooting the B gap. If you're lined up as the 5 technique, you're going to be shooting the C gap. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that. And then for your 4 technique, that's typically where you see your 2 gapping kind of system come in. Now, 2 gapping, if you can't get there, is a guy that you're going to be in charge of the C gap and the B gap. This allows your linebackers to roam free a little bit more often and just kind of chase and basically see ball, go get ball. You're to hold the tackle. You're trying to not let them get off to go block the linebacker. That is not what you want. If that happens, you have failed. So you're going to sit there. You're holding your tackle there, and if you see your tackle going into the B gap, you're wanting to throw throw the tackle to the C gap next to you, and crash inside, or vice versa. If they're going to C gap, you want to toss them into the B gap and hit the outside. Now that's the difference with that, and yeah, that's the difference between your gaps. And another thing is, when you kind of see the shading into the outside shoulders or the inside shoulders kind of lining up, basically where we have it into the gaps, that's more so for 1 gapping stuff. Typically 2 gapping stuff is lined up faced off against the offensive lineman that you're in front. So typically 2 gappers, you're lined up head on, and then if you're 1 gapping, you're kind of shaded off.
Yep, I was going to say that. So if you're a single gap player, a 1 gap player, Malik Jackson kind of a player, you're lined up in that B gap. So that's between left guard and left tackle. Now, Robert coming in here with another question earlier, asking how many gaps are there? It's really, you've got between center and guard is your A gap. Between guard and tackle is your B gap. Between tackle and tight end is your C gap. And then you have the D gap, or the outside, and that's when you get out into the flat. So really it's A, B, C, and D.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll run into weirdos that I think are, at least to me, that will also include a extra gap through your E gap, which is after the slot receiver. And it's going to be the outside shoulder of the slot receiver to this boundary is your E gap. But I find that weird. You just have your 4 gaps, your A, B, C, D, E. Yeah, A, B, C, D. Sorry. I can't keep my fingers up with my mouth.
Duke, I want to read that so bad. That's an amazing comment. Look down at the bottom, Eric.
Yes,
that's amazing. I want to say that, but I really can't. This is family friendly, bud. Easy there, killer. All right. So we just run through where were we at? The 3 technique, the 3-eye technique. Now we're going into your 2 and your 2-eye technique. This is pretty much lined up straight up on the left guard, or in. Going the way that we're going here, we're going from left tackle to the center here. Your 2 technique is face up on the guard. This is going to be a 2 gap kind of a player. This is going to let's see who's a good 4-3 defensive tackle, 2 gap. Tanavasa. Let's just throw that name out there for guys that go back to the Broncos Super Bowl days in the late 90s. Tanavasa was a good 2 gap player lined up on the left guard. And then you'd shade into the inside. This is your 2-eye technique. Shade into the inside, not quite into the A gap. You're going to get to the inside shoulder. Pretty much put your helmet on the numbers of the inside shoulder of whatever guard you're playing, and that's that inside shade. And then you're getting into your 1 techniques, and even what's the other one you have there? You have 2-eye, and there was another one I can't read it from here.
0.
So then you have your 1 technique, which is so you have 2-eye and then 1, and that's going to be the outside shoulder of the offensive center. That's going to be a guy like a Mike Purcell, plays a lot of 1 technique. He plays a lot of 0 technique as a 2-gap defensive lineman there, holding up against the run. That's where Vince Wilfork used to play a lot when the New England Patriots were running that 4-3 defense. Vince Wilfork on one side, or right square in the middle of that, holding up against the run. And they're going to be primarily run defenders. This is where you're going to see Mike Purcell play a lot this year. Is that 0, that 1 technique, and he's going to not really be a gap shooter. He has the ability to do that in the running game. He's just not going to be able to do so in the passing game. I think that there's a little – I don't know why. There's something there with that. He's going to be a lot better suited as drop your butt and anchor and hold up in the 2-gap in the running game, and let your defensive ends, technically, which would be your 3 and 5 technique, go to work around you.
Yeah, so another 2 technique that kind of plays a little bit now is we see him with the Giants and Dalvin Tomlinson. He doesn't do it often, but he does do that 2 technique a little bit. We'll often play a 2-eye. Typically when you see a 4-3 front, your 2 techniques are one of your tackles. So you kind of have a 7 or 5 technique, then you have your 2 technique, then you have your typically a 3 technique, and then again another 5 or 7. Kind of just to shade up a little bit and space out for spacing on the defensive line. You kind of see that a little bit more often with the 4-3. In a 3-4 front, you typically don't see it unless you're in like a goal line situation where you're stacking like 5-6 men on the box or on the line. But again, that's not a 3-4 front technically, so it doesn't count. Now getting to this is there's actually a huge difference again between a 0 technique and a 1 technique, and typically it often goes back to that 1 gapping or 2 gapping. Now, Terrence Knighton, when he was with the Broncos, he did a lot of 1 gapping. He shot the gap and he caused havoc. I mean, that's what he's known for, is all the plays that he disrupted and everything because he was able to shoot through the gap.
Yep.
And that's what he did. He was that 0 technique. When he was asked to be, or he was that 1 technique. When he was asked to be that 0 technique, that's where you get a little bit more 2 gapping. He didn't look quite as good. Now, 0 gapping this is Mike Purcell. I mean, he does this so well. This is why he will make the roster, is because what he can do as a 0 technique. He can take that center, hold that center still, And then when it comes time to shoot either of the A gaps on either side of the shoulder of the center, he can toss that center and get behind the line of scrimmage and bring down the ball carrier, or at least make the ball carrier adjust and run into more Broncos defenders. That is what he does so well. That is your typical nose tackle. There's not anybody else on the Broncos roster who can really do that outside of a few moments here and there. And as you can see, we are going to talk about guys on the roster currently. And the names that you see on the right side of the sheet are actually the guys that we have making the roster right now. But we can definitely talk about some other ones. I saw somebody talking about Kyle Pecco. I don't think that he's going to make the roster. And speaking of Pecco, his cousin, Domata Pecco, was another one of those zero techniques, but he also lined up as a one technique a little bit so often back when they would kind of go back and forth between one gapping and two gapping.
Yep. No, absolutely correct on that. Dang it, I had a good point for this. Just the rip and swim move that we saw, and this is what going back to the preseason game against San Francisco, I believe is when it was, and that was where we really saw Mike Purcell stand out, and that was where I was like, you know what, this guy could actually make the roster. Just with the only problem with Mike Purcell is the lack of bringing a pass rush mentality. He's so good against the run, and when you watch him get entered into the lineup, what was that, week 5 I believe it was against the Chargers?
Week 4 was the last one when Adam Gotts and Josie Jewell got benched. So week 5.
So week 5 was when Mike Purcell actually got inserted into the lineup, and the Broncos run defense actually stepped up massively, and it was way better than it was, especially early in the season. I mean, you watched Leonard Fournette run for 200 yards. Are you kidding me?
Well,
it's also Leonard Fournette.
There's a lot of other issues there with that game that I don't want to get into here. So that's kind of wraps it up. And then on the other side of the line, we went from basically the left side to the center. It's the same thing, just in reverse. That's all the difference is. Robert came in with another question asking, where do running backs go typically? Meaning between the guard, tackle, or guard and center. It all varies. There's actually, for running backs, there's actually multiple places where they can go. So they can go directly behind the center. That could be where the play is designed to run. And then if they get an opening to either the A gap, they can shoot that A gap. They can hit the gap directly. They can run behind the guards and choose what gap, or run behind the tackles, or run outside. They can go everywhere. And it just kind of varies from running back to running back, because some backs don't run to the outside as well. So you typically see them hitting the B or A gap. Other backs hit the outside a little bit better, so you typically see them hitting the C gap or the D gap. So it kind of varies running back to running back. Philip Lindsay does a little bit better hitting the B and C gaps. Royce Freeman did a little bit better hitting the B and A gaps, and then Melvin Gordon does a little bit better hitting the C and the D gaps. Yeah.
You can actually watch a lot of this, and it's really just kind of based on what kind of running scheme you're actually going to deploy out there. The biggest thing is it zone or is it man? So there you go, talent coming in, depending on the scheme, for example. So a stretch zone is what you're going to try to do, like a Kyle Shanahan, the old Mike Shanahan stretch zone system, where you got the bootlegs coming off on the backside. What you're doing is you're moving the offensive line as a cohesive unit, and they're moving laterally. And you're giving you're actually going to have your backside left tackle and your backside left guard cut the backside, the B gap defender and the A gap defender. They're going to cut them down and dive at their legs and get them down to the ground. That's actually illegal now. But so the front side of the offensive line, let's say we're moving to the right here. And so Terrell Davis is going to run. And what his goal is to get to the edge. And he's going to get to that C gap between the right tackle and the tight end. And he's going to try to push that hole. Okay. And then if anything opens up to the backside, it's 1 foot in the ground, and then get your foot and move forward, move vertically north and south. And this is, go back to the 90s. You watch this all the time. Alex Gibbs did such an amazing job coaching up this offensive line to be able to do that. So the gaps that they were actually trying to press the hole on is the C or the B gap. They're running at the left, at the right tackle in this instance. And then it's going to give them an opportunity to cut back and get vertically up the field back in the A gap, because there's a defensive lineman that's on his butt because he just got cut down by Mark Schlereth. Like, so if you're going to run a power scheme, everyone's moving forward. You're running into the A gap right now between guard and center, and you're going to run straight as fast as you can through in between guard and center. So it depends on what kind of scheme you're talking about here, and how these defensive linemen can kind of dictate which way these running backs are going. Is a lot of what kind of technique are they playing.
Yep.
So All right, Eclipse coming in here with a $2 super. Eclipse, what's up, dude? Just checking in. Hashtag Happy Friday. Hashtag State of Being. We appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us today. Let's see if we can get some more questions here, guys. If you have
I wanted to go ahead and answer this one from Robert.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically in this, we were including the different looks at Fangio scheme and Fangio formations in this. These techniques are just cover all of them. Basically, any scheme, typically what they run exactly is different. Now, getting specifically to Vic Fangio's real quick, a little bit, is we didn't see a lot of 2 or 2-eye techniques from him. It was typically 3 technique, 1 or 0-1 technique, 3 technique, and then a lot of 4-eye or 4 technique. Is what we see a lot from Vic Fangio typically with rotations there. If they go to a sub package using 5 defensive backs, somebody a little bit more agile, like this last year we saw Draymond Jones actually slide inside a little bit and play that 1 technique. When they were doing that, they were 1 gapping, and then when Mike Purcell was in there was a lot more 2 gapping. So yeah, we did include the differences in there. We just didn't really cover it like very clearly, I guess would be the way to put it.
Yeah, it would have been a lot easier if we could have got together a little bit before this. I've just been so busy. We haven't got a chance to really break down and get a good spreadsheet and an outline. To do an outline on something like this where we could break it down and go into a lot more detail. Guys, if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to hit us up like right now. Get your questions in immediately. We can answer anything you guys want. If you guys don't have an opportunity, if you're listening to this podcast after the fact as just a podcast, hit us up on Twitter, on Facebook. You guys shoot us a message. We will answer any questions you guys want to have. Robert coming in here. What is the difference between a cut and a chop block? Okay, so this is actually pretty easy question to answer. A cut block is a single offensive lineman who is just what you're doing is you're essentially diving at a player's legs. You dive at their legs, you dive at their knees, and you try to wash them out and trip them over. Now, if you do it legally, a cut block is 100% okay. You can do it any game and it doesn't matter. A chop block is different. And this is where you got to see a lot of interesting penalties, a lot of really bad knee injuries, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s. Go back especially before then. What you get there is you have an offensive lineman who is already engaged up above the waist, and they're blocking a defensive lineman. And then another offensive lineman comes in and takes out the knees of that same defensive lineman that's already blocked. That is a chop block. It's a personal foul and a 15-yard penalty. It's a very severe way to hurt somebody badly. You got to see a lot of that. There's actually another way you can chop block too, and that's backside pursuit. You see this. I saw this with I can't remember who it was. It was one of the Broncos offensive linemen, and he dropped just straight down to his knees. And backside pursuit, as if a guy's running and in backside pursuit, runs and hits this offensive lineman that's dropped down to his knees on all 4 and trips over him. It's a clipping penalty, a tripping penalty, but it's also another way of achieving a chop block, especially if the guy's engaged.
Yeah. So getting onto this, Andy Rock came in, not to because we don't want to ignore everybody on Facebook. He says, "Hey, Eric, are you scouting just the Broncos or all other teams?" I typically just scout in terms of NFL teams, just the Broncos. I do go over every other team's all games from the previous season once at one point, typically during the offseason, actually, is typically when I do it, just because other than that, I'm busy scouting draft prospects. But I scout draft prospects, and on my own personal board and everything like that, I have my grades for them overall, and then I also do a adjustment for them to be specifically for the Broncos. But yeah, for the most part, I just got the Broncos basically.
Yeah. All right, Duke coming in here with a $10 super. Duke, thanks, buddy. We appreciate that, man. Learn more tonight about defense techniques and gaps than I ever had before. Way to break it down, guys. Thank you. Hey, this is what we like to bring on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Deep takes, great information, and to try to teach as many people as we possibly can. And we appreciate you guys for coming and joining us and learning. I mean, I learned just a little bit as well on this whole operation, just the way that it's supposed to kind of line up and shake out. There's a lot to learn about football, and especially when you got a guy like Erick that can really break it down for you guys. I wish we could have got a chance to really go even more in depth on this. And honestly, if we were not doing a live stream, if this was a true podcast, then we could have probably gone even further into depth on this.
Yeah, but we love you guys a little bit too much, so we got to go live for you. But I did see a question earlier about Kyle Pecco and kind of how he fits in this. And then we'll take a couple more questions, then we'll get into the players a little bit and talk about them. But with Kyle Pecco is he has the traits to be your 0-1 technique, but he doesn't have the strength or the power to be that. He has the strength or the power of being a 3 technique, a true 3 technique, and a true 3-4 or a true 4-3 front. So his fit in the Bronco scheme is just very limited about it. I don't think that he makes the roster as a result. Plus, he's just never panned out yet. I hope that he's able to do something to try and potentially land with another team, but it's just not looking good for him.
No, it's really not.
What's Buona also asks, how easy is it to find a Purcell-like player if he produces the same this year? It's actually not that hard, really. There's typically who can bring in at least what he does. There's typically a few guys every draft year that do that, and a lot of them go undrafted. You're just looking for guys who have good power, who can hold their blocks and just defend the run. That's really all you're looking for. If you get lucky, you find a guy who can also shoot the gaps and provide interior pressure.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Who was the guy? Was there a guy this year that was a good 0 technique that for some reason I think that there was one that was actually that could bring some interior pass pressure as well? And for whatever reason, my mind is completely blank.
Go ahead and take another question. We can come back to this. I can look it up.
Yeah.
As you know, I have my long list of scouting.
Yes, you do. Let's see here. Give me just a second, guys. Bear with me. I'm sorry about that. Terry Randall coming in from Canada, showing that Denver Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is a hashtag state of being. Hashtag Erick's Tie Rocks. Hey, Terry, I love the shirt, the football pre-shirt you got on there. You need to get one of these Dove Valley Deep Diver shirt and then send me a picture of it, man. Seriously. Also, another thing, Jacob Doan, if you're listening to this after the fact as a podcast, I still have not received a confirmation email for your order. It is ordered. It is supposed to be on the way. I'm not exactly sure why it's taking so long. It's been about a month since I ordered that, and I'm not sure why. It's probably with the state of affairs in the world right now and everything like that. But as soon as that happens, as soon as I get the confirmation email that your order is shipped, I will give you a tracking number immediately. So it is on the way. I promise you, it is on the way. Let's see here. Eclipse never fickle on the nickel big pickle. Erick Trickel clink. All right, James Campbell. Could you do some defensive coverages like cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, cover 6? Absolutely.
Lance, you can take that one.
You know what? We can do that. That's a fun one. Nick is probably a good one to get in on this one. He's reading a book from a guy, I can't remember what his name is, but it's called Match Quarters. It's it's a really good book. It goes in a lot into detail of what the Denver Broncos are doing. I have it ordered. It's on the way. I'm hopefully going to be able to start reading that here soon. But defensive coverages, you know what? Let's turn that into another podcast so that we can do a little bit more research on it. Really, it's cover 1. You're talking single deep high safety, obviously cover 1 man, your man pressure, stuff like that. Cover 2 deep safeties. What are your cornerbacks going to do? They're probably going to sit in the shallow zones. You have another a middle linebacker that's going to be good in dropping into coverage. He's going to drop back in that middle zone because your 2 safeties are split in the field. They have half coverage in the deep half, and then you have your cornerbacks that are in the shallow zones that are going to be working down in the flats and stuff like that. There's so many different variations of that. The Tampa 2 defense is straight true cover 2. You've got cover 4 that's quarter the field and it's essentially a man defense, but you have to realize where the zone passes off. So you've got right at the numbers is one zone, and then you've got the middle of the field, the next numbers, and then the boundaries. That's how you line up those zones. Really a man defense is straight backwards. There's not a whole lot of moving around. As soon as somebody crosses into the zone, you got to be able to pass off. Big communication. Cover 3, you've got 3 deep zones, single high safety, then 2 outside cornerbacks, another cornerback or another safety is going to be roaming inside the box. where the linebackers play. I mean, there's so many different ways you can break this down. You got cover 6 as well, where you've got a single high safety running in one half, and you've got a slot cornerback and or a nickel defensive back, and you've got an outside cornerback running the boundary where they cut that. So they cut that at the numbers to split that into their what your linebackers are doing underneath that, going into the flats to make sure everything's covered. Like, it's so much fun to talk about defensive coverages. I played cornerback in high school, so I know a little bit about this kind of stuff. So I'm very interested in breaking this down a little bit more in depth for you guys.
That is something that definitely we can do. Lance could definitely take the lead on that. Coverages is one thing that I struggle with. It's one thing I constantly struggle with, coverages and keeping what's the different things in place. That's the one thing. The stuff on the offensive line, the defensive line, that's where I specialize at in doing that. That's why talking about the technique and everything for the offensive line, for the defensive line, why it's so easy and natural for me. But coverages, once you get farther away from the ball, it's like, ugh. And Charlie, they're called Funko Pops.
What didn't JJ Watt play? We answered this question. I'm not sure how that got up here. Let's see here. We're going to go to the comment stream here, guys, and see what we've got here. Apologies, guys. Let me go through this
real quick. Let's get to these players.
That's actually a great idea. Let's get to the players here now. Jarrell Casey, Eric, you have it listed out on this, and I'm going to read this off for you just for the guys listening after the fact. Jarrell Casey, going back to defensive line techniques, this is a guy that's probably going to be able to play all over the defensive line. First and foremost, he can play. I've watched some highlight films of him and watched him over the last couple of years, especially. I mean, 5-time Pro Bowl player, a great interior pass rusher. But it's not just on the interior. The guy can stand up on a 2-point stance and play out on that 7 or 6 technique as well.
One year he got a sack as a wide 9.
Yeah, he did get a sack as a wide 9. In fact, he actually got a sack against Lamar Jackson lined up in a 6 technique last year.
Yep. So Jarrell Casey can play all of your line. That's why he's basically every single technique. No 2 technique, because as I said, it's not really that utilized in the Vic Fangio defense. That's more standard 4-3 stuff. 6 technique, that should be on there. I don't think that we'll see much of him as a 9 technique. So I didn't want to throw that on there. And I kind of don't think we'll see much of a 6 technique. I think for the most part, it'll kind of be that 0 to 5 technique that we'll see him at. Shelby Harris, we saw last year that he can't play that 0-1 technique. Even when he is one gapping, he still struggles with it. So not expecting him to see him any there. So he's kind of that standard 3-4 base defensive end as that 3-4-5 technique, which I had the biggest issue of this. This is the whole reason why I threw the T's on here. Is because I put in 3-4-5, and I kept saying March 4th, 2005. Really frustrating me. I didn't want to take the time to figure it because I was kind of rushing through it before we went live. So that's why the T's are there. Draymond Jones and McTelvin Ajim, they're very similar in players. Last year we saw Draymond Jones move inside as that 0-1 technique, more so 1 technique than 0, but there were a few snaps as a true nose tackle, I guess would be the way to put it. I think for the most part we'll see him as a 3-4-5 technique. McTelvin Ajim, he can kind of do the same thing as Draymond Jones. Again, they are very similar, very athletic, very quick. You kind of want to get them matched up on the center because they can win with their athleticism. It'll be more obvious passing situation like 3rd and longs and everything that we might see that happen a little bit more often. Mike Purcell, we already discussed him pretty well at length. He's just your standard 0-1 technique. That's basically all he's going to bring to it. Jonathan Harris. Now, what little bit of film study I've done on Jonathan Harris, he screams just kind of like a Shelby Harris type player, not a guy that you really want to move inside, but a guy that you kind of want as your base 3-4 end. And with Denver, they run so many sub packages that we might see him used if he makes a roster, mind you, we might see him used as a little bit more as kind of that 3-4-5 technique. And Christian Covington will make the team as a 3-tech over Harris. That's definitely plausible. That is when we made the roster on the things last week. That was a big conversation that Lance and I had. We kept going back and forth about Jonathan Harris and Christian Covington. Ultimately, I think that with Vic Fangio's familiarity with Jonathan Harris and the time that Jonathan Harris has had in the scheme, both in Denver and with the Chicago Bears, I think that gives him an edge over Christian Covington, who didn't play all that well with the Dallas Cowboys last year. So that was one reason we went to that.
Yeah, no, Kia Kolo, I see that question. It was just it's such a difficult discussion there, and it's based off our roster projection that we did last week. So it's hard to see that. Now, I want to go back to that discussion that we had the other day and the whole conversation that you and I had with McTelvin Najim and Draymond Jones. Do you think they're really going to play that 0 technique, or are they just going to be primarily as a 1 technique, especially on passing downs?
I think that we'll see them not very often, but I think we will see them play that true nose tackle role a little bit,
right?
Just here and there, maybe like by the end of the season, maybe a total of like 15 snaps between the two of them. But I definitely think that we will see it a little bit.
Right. Okay. That makes actually a lot more sense. Now, give me your starting 4 on the, 3 defensive linemen. And it's probably going to be a 4th defensive lineman as well, especially in a nickel package. Well, not even in a nickel package. Let me see here. How am I wanting to say this? Top 4 pass rushers that are most versatile on this roster right now.
Top 4 pass rushers that are most versatile on this roster?
Yep.
Are we including edges?
In that? Just the defensive line. We're talking about
the
defensive line here.
The most versatile, I think, and part of it is because he's shown it, is I think Jarrell Casey.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's shown that versatility to a more extreme level than Draymond Jones has, and McTelvin Najim hasn't even seen the field. After him, I think I want to go with Draymond Jones. Okay. Because we saw him a little bit kind of play all over the defensive line last year. He was doing a good job getting pressures. I think like for rookie defensive linemen, he was somewhere up there in terms of pressures from rookie defensive linemen or something like that. Can't remember exactly what it was, but he did very well there. I think after him, McTelvin Najim. And I think that Shelby Harris would be 4th just because we know for sure he can't do that 0-1 technique. When he started out there last year, I still don't get why for the first 4 weeks of the season, that's where he was playing. Made no sense to me. Just not his skill set at all. So those are the guys, and obviously the least versatile and worst pass rusher on the defensive line is Mike Purcell. Just not what he is. He's that big, strong guy that plays that 0-1 technique. 330 pounds, doesn't have great length, not overly athletic, just strong, powerful, and wins that way.
Yeah. Bawana coming in here with a decent question here. If you could add a D lineman, who should you add at DVDD? Well, to me, I'm trying to find somebody that can really play that 0 technique and be a true effective pass rusher that you don't have to take off the field in obvious passing situations. Mike
Lance
Purcell needs to be upgraded.
You broke up there a little bit.
I can't say. Did you lose me? Oh,
yeah, we lost you for a little bit there. Yeah, I can't say I disagree with really. If I'm looking to upgrading this defensive line, I mean, obviously Aaron Donald, obviously Chris Jones, Fletcher Cox, like those are just such talented players that's what you got to look for. I mean, you can't really pass that up. But Denver's got to upgrade their ability to get pressure from the 0-1 technique. Trying to think of who the guy is that does such a good job of it now in the NFL. Plays in the NFC. Can't think of his name, but plays that 0-1 technique. He does such a good job at it.
Fletcher Cox does a really good job playing 0-1. He's probably better as a 3-4 technique. Gerald McCoy would have been a pretty decent one as a 3-4-5 technique.
Yeah.
Trying to think of just somebody who plays the 0-1 because you don't really see that.
If he bounces back, Star Little with the Buffalo Bills.
Yes, there you go.
He'd be a good 0-1 technique if he was able to bounce back.
Yep, absolutely. Eclipse Stormborn, I'd bring back Danny Trevathan. I mean, if we could get Danny Trevathan to play at the 2015 level, then you're absolutely correct. I'd love him in coverage in this defense.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Let's go to the comment stream here, guys. We're going to cut this down here just a little bit. If you guys have any questions about, like I said, if you have any questions about what we're talking about tonight, hit us up on Twitter. You can find me at Sanderson MHH and for Erick at Erick Trickel. Notice the CK in Erick and the EL in Trickel when you do that. See here. There was an interesting one here. Purcell is a little undersized as a 3. No, Purcell is perfectly oversized as a 3.
Yeah.
He would
typically with your 3 techniques is you typically want them to be about no more than about 310 pounds. So somewhere from 290 to 310. That's where you typically find your 3 techniques about it. And Mike Purcell, he plays almost at 330. That's what he plays at.
Yeah. Andrew Rock Lovato coming in on Facebook. I'm going to pull this really fast. You guys have covered so amazing facts on the defensive side of the ball. Thank you. So who or which 2 defensive players will be in the Pro Bowl? Well, they won't because the team will be in the Super Bowl. Hey, you know what? I appreciate the optimism. Now, to answer the original question, which players are going to be in the Pro Bowl? Obviously, Von Miller's one. Justin Simmons should definitely be another one. Kareem Jackson's been a snub. Eric, did you know that Kareem Jackson has never made a Pro Bowl?
Yeah.
Like, that's an amazing fact to me that Kareem Jackson has never played in a Pro Bowl. He's been such a solid player for a long time. I mean, 10 seasons. But when you're playing in a division that has, or in a conference that has Aqib Talib, you got Jalen Ramsey, Marcus Peters has been there, Chris Harris Jr. Like, there's a lot of quality cornerbacks in the AFC for the last decade. But Kareem Jackson has just always been one of those solid players. But I like him for a Pro Bowl this year. I mean, can we give a dark horse and say that Draymond Jones, if he has a breakout season, could Draymond Jones be a good one for the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, it's definitely a dark horse. And I would say with Kareem Jackson, I mean, his play in with the Houston Texans was good. It wasn't great. So I'm not super shocked that he didn't make it. And then last year he missed time with an injury, and then he got suspended at the end of the season too. So not surprised that he hasn't made it yet.
It was just
doesn't mean he's bad. I mean, he's a good player, just not great, I guess would be the way to put it.
Yeah, and like I said, with the depth and the talent in the AFC at the cornerback position over the last decade, so
yeah,
you can't just be a good player. You have to be a great player, have a standout season. I wanted to write an article, but I couldn't actually bring myself to do it, about how Kareem Jackson was the defensive MVP for the Broncos last season. And I mean, it was a hot take kind of a thing, but
definitely hot take.
You saw it, though. You saw the palpable leadership that he had when he went out there and made a big play. Everybody rallied around him. And, I mean, the Houston game was so amazing to watch him get that revenge game against it. But, I mean, you watched him fill in the running game, go back to that Week 5 game against the Chargers where he made, 2 or 3 tackles behind the line of scrimmage. He's an amazing blitzer. But then when he was off the field, that defense looked different. There was no tone setter. Kareem Jackson, as a tone setter, was potentially the MVP of the Broncos defense. And that for that reason alone, I wanted to write that article, but it was just such a hard argument to make.
So real quick, to answer this question, I think that not going to list off everybody, because I think that the Denver could really have multiple Pro Bowlers on their defense this year if they play up to expectations. I'm going to just pick one who's kind of a dark horse, and Charlie Beagle actually has him in the chat. AJ Johnson. I'm expecting big things out of him this year. He's got the defense down now. He's got got that year under his belt now, and the Vic Fangio knows how to use him. He knows what he can and can't do. Last year, there's a little bit of experimentation going on, and not all of it panned out, but they know where to work on and everything. I'm expecting big things out of here. And before we get out of here, there is one more question that I saw from Wannabeast, and he asked about Everson Griffin, about where he would fit. And if you're wanting him here, Buana, you might want to tune out a little bit, because adding Everson Griffin just makes no sense.
No.
So Everson Griffin, he kind of fills that 6'7", 9 technique there that Von Miller, Bradley Chubb kind of play. So I'm not exactly thinking that he doesn't really fit. He's more of a true 4-3 end than 3-4 rush linebacker. Doesn't really fit on the defensive line in a base 3-4 front. Granted, there's a little bit more sub packages being used in Denver now, but it's just with how Vic Fangio runs him, he doesn't really come in and fit very well there, because then again, I mean, unless you can get him to be that number 3 pass rusher and upgrade over Jeremiah Tauchu, which I highly doubt, I don't think you're getting a guy who was definitely a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL last year.
Yeah, no, and he was so underrated too. Like him and Danielle Hunter, both of those guys, extremely underrated in what they do up there in Minnesota. Like seriously, it's amazing to watch. But no, I agree with you, Eric, 100% on that. The 6-7-5 technique, you could probably see Everson Griffin line up on the inside shoulder of the offensive tackle and rush that way, kind of crash that B gap, especially if you got a blitzing, Anthony Barr or an Anthony Harris, a guy coming off the edge as like a blitzer, a linebacker, cornerback, maybe even a safety as well. Line him up as that 5 technique and get him on the inside and watch him go to work there. But really, he is that same kind of mold of the Von Miller, Bradley Chubb. He's more of a true 4-3 defensive end. Danielle Hunter is one, though. If you could get him in a Denver uniform, there's a little bit more versatility with him. I think that he could be at least decent. I think he could probably drop back into some coverage too. That guy's a freak of an athlete.
Yeah. And before we get out of here, I do want to drop this out because we kind of got it. It was a late question, but we got to jump out of here soon. So I kind of want to get to this. Eric, with your picks to make the team, who's your NASCAR package? I'm assuming you mean consist of. It's actually pretty simple. Is Von Miller and Bradley Chubb? Those are going to be your 2 edge rushers. And then for your down linemen, I'm trusting James Jones and Najim. I think that all 3 of them bring more than what Christian Covington brings. I think that, and so I don't think that's why I don't have him on here either. But yeah, it's just those guys, and I could even substitute one of those 3 defensive linemen for a Jeremiah Tauchu.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. I would like to see Shelby Harrison on some pass rushing packages as a 5 not as a 4-eye technique, excuse me. That would probably be a decent one there, lined up next to Von Miller. See if he can't eat up a double team really quick. But he also worked really well out of that 4-eye technique last year. I'd like to see Jarrell Casey as like that 2 technique, 2-3 technique. That would be really good to see there. Bradley Chubb on the other side of that, and then possibly bringing in a blitz there with Alexander Johnson. I want to see what he can do as a pass rusher, as a blitzer. That would be really fun to watch. But, I totally agree with you. Now, guys, we are at 59 minutes and 17 seconds and counting. So we're going to wrap it up here. Guys, thank you all once again for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can follow me at Sanderson MHH on Twitter, and for Eric at Erick Trickel. Also, make sure you guys are following the show at DVDD_pod. Follow the mother account at Mile High Huddle for instant breaking news and analysis articles on your Denver Broncos. Anything you want to find there, opinion articles, head on over to milehighhuddle.com. Keep the conversation going for us. That's one of the best ways to help grow the website and also help your football knowledge. Like I said, we're willing to answer any questions you guys have for us. If you follow us, if you hit us up on the website or anything like that, head on over to huddleuppod.com. Get your merch on. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself a t-shirt. There's a coffee cup. You got a face mask, hoodie. There's something for the guys, something for the girls, a little bit of something for everybody out there. I think Mile High Insiders merch is coming here soon as well. And if you guys aren't financially able to do so, the easiest ways that you guys can support the show, subscribe wherever you're watching, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever that might be. Like every video that you guys see. And if you love it, share it. Share it to everyone in Broncos country. Get as many eyes on our content as much as possible. Now, Eric, before we get out of here, any last words?
Oh, man, I'm ready to go. I'm going to go play Pokemon Go with the family and get outside and spend a little bit of time with everybody.
Hey, there you go. I like that. James Campbell coming in there with that hashtag, the hashtag right here. Hashtag hit the like. This deserves way more than 36 likes, he says. Now, thank you all once again.
Sorry. And we're glad you guys all enjoyed it. We're so thankful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So thankful. Christy, you have a great night as well. Thank you all once again for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You all stay safe. Take care. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next week, 6 p.m. Thanks, guys.